"This is it, Alara," he said without turning. His voice was tight, but there was a certain calmness to it, like he had already accepted what was about to happen. She walked toward him, trying to steady the trembling in her hands. "We can't go back," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Not after everything we've found." Riven turned to face her, his eyes locking onto hers. For a brief moment, there was nothing but the quiet hum of the room and the weight of their shared knowledge. The betrayal was everywhere, buried deep within the politics of both their peoples. They had stumbled onto something bigger than either of them had imagined, something that would destroy both sides if it wasn't stopped. "You're right," Riven said softly. "But if we expose this, we'll be marked as traitors. They'll hunt us down, no matter where we go." Alara felt the chill in his words. They both knew the stakes. The truth could change the course of the war, but at what cost? Neither of them had the luxury of pretending this was just a matter of survival anymore. It was about doing what was right, facing the enemy, not just with weapons, but with courage, defiance, and truth. "Then we fight," she said, the fire in her chest igniting once more. "We do this together, Riven. We can't let them win. Not like this." Riven's eyes softened, but there was something else there, something deeper. A shared bond that neither of them had fully understood until now. The war, the lies, everything that had torn their world apart. It had led them here, to this moment, standing side by side. He reached out and took her hand, the contact both a promise and a silent vow. Together, he agreed, his voice low and steady. The decision was made. No matter what came next, they couldn't go back to the lives they once knew. There would be no forgiveness, no second chances. But for the first time in a long while, Alara felt a surge of hope. They weren't just fighting for their people anymore. They were fighting for something bigger, something worth living for. As Riven leaned in, his forehead touching hers, the world outside seemed to fade away. The war, the betrayal, the uncertainty, it all disappeared, replaced by one simple truth. They had each other, and that was enough to keep fighting. The cold wind cut through the ruined streets, its icy fingers seeping through the cracks in Alara's armor. She pulled the collar up tighter, trying to shield herself from the relentless chill, but nothing could numb the pounding in her chest. The weight of their plan hung over her, suffocating. The truth was almost within reach, but so was the betrayal. She glanced at Riven, walking beside her, his face set in grim determination. There was a tension in the air, an unspoken fear that neither of them dared to voice. They were so close, too close, and yet the danger had never been more real. The enemy knew they were coming, and now they had to face something far worse, betrayal from within. "Are you sure about this?" Riven asked, his voice low, his eyes scanning the dark alleyways. His words weren't directed at the plan. They both knew there was no turning back now. It was something deeper. Alara nodded, even though her stomach twisted. "We have no choice. We have to expose them. If we don't, everything we've fought for, everything we've lost, will be for nothing." She swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "We can't let them keep controlling us." Riven met her eyes for a brief moment, his jaw tightening. "And what about us? What if this destroys everything between us?" Her heart stopped for a moment. She wanted to tell him it wouldn't, that they could fight through it like they always had. But the truth was harder to admit. She didn't know anymore. The stakes were too high. "I'm not afraid of losing you," she said softly, her voice trembling. "But I can't lose this war. Now when we're so close." Before Riven could reply, the sharp crack of a gunshot shattered the silence. Alara's heart skipped a beat as she spun around, her hand reaching for her sidearm. But it wasn't an enemy soldier emerging from the shadows. It was someone they knew, someone she never thought could betray them. Sergeant Dean, one of Riven's closest allies, stepped forward, his weapon raised. His eyes were wild, almost unrecognizable. "I'm sorry," Dean said, his voice thick with regret. "But this is bigger than any of us. You were never meant to succeed." The words hit Alara like a punch to the gut. "Dean, what are you?" "You're too dangerous," he cut her off, his voice trembling with emotion. "The truth, it's not meant to be uncovered. I couldn't let you destroy everything." Riven's hand shot out, grabbing Alara's wrist. "No," he hissed, his voice raw with anger and disbelief. "You're lying." Dean's weapon trembled, but his eyes were still cold. "I wish it weren't true, Riven. But we've been manipulated from the start. They'll destroy everything, even you." Alara's mind raced. Betrayal was a heavy word, but this was worse than that. This was the kind of devastation that could tear them apart, everything they had built. The truth that had brought them here, now shattered in an instant. "Then what?" Alara asked, her voice sharp with fear. "What do we do now?" Riven turned to her, his expression torn. "We fight. We keep going. We come this far. We can't stop now." Tears welled in Alara's eyes, but she blinked them back. "But at what cost, Riven?" His answer was a simple, painful truth. The cost of everything, and everyone. Alara's breath came in short gasps as she ducked behind the shattered remains of a building. The sounds of war, the blasts, the screams, the overwhelming chaos, blurred in her ears, but she couldn't let herself be consumed by it. Not now. Not when so much was at stake. She checked her wrist pad, the only piece of functioning tech left on her. Riven's signal was still strong, still there. He hadn't fallen. Yet. "Riven, do you copy?" Her voice was strained, but steady. It had to be. For him. For the galaxy. A crackling burst of static followed. Then his voice, ragged but determined. "I'm here." "Where are you?" "North side of the perimeter. The Variants are pushing through faster than expected. They've got reinforcements on the way." She glanced out at the horizon. The sky was dark, the glow of their massive warships burning bright. "We don't have much time." The silence that followed was deafening. She could almost hear him processing the situation, weighing the same impossible decision she was. "We'll make it. Hold the line, Alara. Hold on for just a little longer." She clenched her jaw, fighting the fear bubbling up in her chest. "I'm not letting them win, Riven. Not like this. Not when we're this close." A distant explosion rocked the ground beneath her, and she nearly lost her footing. Through the smoke, she saw figures moving, Solaran soldiers, some with Varink's weapons, others with nothing but the will to survive. They were outnumbered, but they weren't retreating. They were pushing forward. "Riven, I'm going to do it," Alara said, her voice low. "I'm going to try to reach the council. We have to stop this war now, before it kills us all." "Don't." Riven's voice was sharp, urgent. "You know what will happen if you do. They'll use it against you. We're too exposed. It's too dangerous. You can't." "I don't have a choice," she cut him off, her eyes steely with resolve. "If I don't, we'll be fighting forever, and we won't survive another round." Another explosion shook the ground, this one closer, and the building above her groaned under the pressure. She didn't look up. She didn't have time. "I'm coming for you," Riven said. "We're going to end this together. I promise." Alara's heart skipped, but she didn't have time to savor the feeling. She knew what was at stake. She knew what it would take to change the tide. She adjusted her pack, checked her rifle one last time, and stepped into the chaos. No more running. No more hiding. They were going to fight. Together. The battlefield was silent now, the smoke from the last explosions slowly dissipating into the cold sky. The cries of the wounded had faded, replaced by the soft hum of damaged ships limping toward makeshift medical stations. The war was over, but the peace was far from certain. Alara stood at the edge of the ruined city, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The once bustling metropolis was now little more than a pile of rubble, a reminder of everything they had lost. She could still feel the weight of the decision she had made, the decision to trust Riven, to risk everything for a chance at ending the war. It had been the right choice, she knew that, but it had come at a cost. Riven appeared beside her, his footsteps heavy on the cracked ground. He didn't say anything at first, just stood next to her, letting the silence hang between them. He looked different, more worn, as if the battle had aged him by years. His eyes, though, were still full of determination. "They're going to rebuild," he said finally, his voice low. "But it's not going to be easy. The scars are deep." Alara nodded. She had seen it in the faces of the soldiers, the civilians. They were all haunted by the war, by the things they had done to survive. "No," she agreed. "It won't be." The path to peace wasn't clear. The war had torn apart the fabric of both their worlds. Allies had become enemies, and enemies had become allies out of necessity. But the hatred, the distrust, it wouldn't vanish overnight. I should have never believed we could end it so simply, she whispered. We stopped the immediate destruction, but the future, it feels uncertain. Riven looked at her, his gaze steady. We did more than stop the destruction. We gave him a reason to fight for something else. A future, maybe, together. Alara's heart ached at his words. She had wanted peace for so long, had thought that if they just exposed the truth, everything would be different. But now, standing in the aftermath, she understood that peace was a fragile thing. It wasn't something you just declared. It was something you fought for every day, no matter how hard it was. We'll keep fighting, she said, her voice firm. Not with weapons, but with everything else. We'll rebuild together. I believe in that. Riven didn't say anything for a moment. Then, he stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. We're still here, he said softly. We have to start somewhere. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, Alara felt a flicker of hope. They had made it through the darkness. And now, they would walk into the light together. The sound of distant gunfire echoed in the streets, but the air between Alara and Riven was eerily calm. They stood on the edge of what had once been a thriving city, now reduced to ashes and ruins. Their people had fought through the impossible, and they had survived. But survival came at a price. Alara's eyes scanned the horizon, watching the rising sun cast long shadows across the desolate land. The war had ended, but the scars were deep, not just on the planet, but in their hearts. She felt in every breath she took the weight of all they had lost. Beside her, Riven shifted, his gaze distant. Do you think we'll ever truly be able to forgive ourselves for this? His voice was rough, as though the question had been gnawing at him for too long. Alara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached out and placed her hand on his. The touch was soft, comforting, but the tension between them remained thick. I don't know, she said finally, but I do know one thing. We've survived. Together. And that's worth something. Riven turned toward her, his eyes searching hers, as though looking for something she couldn't name. You always said there was a chance for peace, he murmured, voice tinged with uncertainty. But it's not that simple, is it? No, she agreed softly. It's not. Peace isn't just a word you say or a treaty you sign. It's the things we do every day to make it real. We got a long road ahead, but we'll walk it. Together. The weight of those words lingered in the air between them. The road to peace wouldn't be easy, and they both knew it. It would take more than just military victories or political maneuvering. It would take resilience, trust, and the willingness to forgive both others and themselves. Riven squeezed her hand gently, as if holding on to her for support. We've lost so much, he said, the pain evident in his voice. But we still have each other. And maybe that's enough to rebuild. Alara smiled, a faint, bittersweet curve of her lips. Maybe it is. We've fought for love in the darkest places, and I think that might just be the strongest thing we have left. They stood together, overlooking the ruins of their past, but for the first time in a long while, there was hope. Hope for the future they could build, one day at a time. Their love, forged in the fires of war, had become their foundation. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was enough to change the fate of two species.